Day 2 of Titans mandatory minicamp. The defense bounces back today with some plays made by another rookie, Femi Oladejo, but Cam Ward had his fair share of highlights. We're going to break down what happened at practice, and we're going to discuss some coach quotes from the podium before practice. All three coordinators spoke today. This is the Music City Audible. Let's get to it.
As much as Jeff likes to talk during practice, I think we found out that we have another guy that likes to talk probably just as much. So it was good banter. It was good competition. It was good for the energy of practice.
That's Coach Brian Callahan talking about the trash talking ongoing between Jeffrey Simmons and Cam Ward. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast. We appreciate you tuning in. All the diehard Titans fans out there tuning into our Tennessee Titans podcast presented by Sinkers Beverages, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville, in partnership with 440 Sports. I'm Justin Graver. With me, as always, Justin Melo, podcasting from not Nashville. It was pointed out to us on Twitter that we are not at Minicamp. We are aggregating reports by very good reporters who are at Minicamp and sharing those reports with you so that you don't have to comb through all of them and put all the pieces together. That's what we're doing on the podcast here, Justin.
We do so much more than that, okay? I'm going to just stop you right there because you don't come here because we put together information. You can get that in a lot of places. You come here for the measured analysis and the takes and good takes, that is. And look, we're not there and stuff, but I break a lot of news. I'm sourced. I'm on Nashville radio all the time and Tennessee radio. So it's like, we're not aggregators. We deserve more credit than that.
Fair enough, Justin. Thanks for correcting me, and thanks everyone for tuning in. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, like this video, drop a comment below. Day 2 of Titans mandatory minicamp. A lot went down again today, and Cam Ward and Jeffrey Simmons trash talking. That was the big story from yesterday's camp, along with Cam Ward going 20 of 21 in practice. Not as good of a day for the offense on Wednesday, based on all the reporting out there. The Titans offense got off to an okay start. Defense struggled a little bit early, but the defense handled themselves and I think won the day, was the official consensus from the people who were there. And we're going to talk about what that means for this team, players that stood out, like a rookie that we didn't talk about yesterday when we talked about a bunch of rookies showing out, and we got a bunch of nice quotes that we're going to dissect here. But let's start with Cam Ward, because we always start with Cam Ward, because Cam Ward is, the Titans season hinges on whether or not Cam Ward is good. And the future of the franchise really hinges on whether or not Cam Ward is good. The trash talking was a big point of conversation in the press conferences before practice, and apparently continued at practice again today. In fact, there was a moment reported where Jeffrey Simmons and Cam Ward butted heads together. They were talking trash so much, like helmets clashing in the field. And I love the energy. Like Callahan said, it brings a certain energy to practice, and that is something that this team needs.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And, we're going to play some quotes. Brian Callahan talked about it. Nick Holtz talked about it. They had some really intriguing things to say. But by all accounts, another, a good day for Cam Ward. Maybe not a great day, but a good day. There's one play in particular that I'm excited to talk about. I think you know which one if you've been on Twitter. Too bad we're not going to get a clip of it, apparently. But credit to the defense. Yesterday you and I talked about, should we be worried about the defense? They tightened things up on day 2. I heard Cam Ward did not have as good of a day targeting the middle of the field. We talked a lot about that yesterday. Do they have the linebackers to play coverage in the middle? Well, apparently James Williams was one of those linebackers that played some good coverage across the middle of the field on day 2. So and look, it was a third down day, a lot of blitz packages. That puts the offense in not so great situations, and it puts the defense in advantageous situations. And credit to them for supposedly taking advantage of that.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. I wanted to mention that it was a third down day, so a lot of 3rd and 10 looks, a lot, like you said, a lot of blitzes, and then they ended practice with a 2-minute drill. So that's another situation where, the defense likely knows a lot of passing is coming. They are more ready for what the offense is trying to throw at them than you would be if it was just like a lineup, call it 1st and 10, drive the field type of drill. This was the work was on 3rd down, and that I think is an important context to point out. But I do want to start, as we get into some quotes here, with the energy that the Cam Ward, Jeffrey Simmons heated rivalry is bringing to practice. And I think this is going to be one of those amazing rivalries where they go at it every day in practice, but then on game day, there's nobody who has Cam Ward's back more than Jeffrey Simmons. And, offensive line always have their quarterbacks back and teammates in general. But I feel like Jeffrey Simmons, we saw him getting hyped up on the sidelines during Will Levis's first start over 2 years ago now against the Falcons, saying like, damn, that damn Will can play, and just like talking up Will Levis off of one game. I think as Jeffrey Simmons and his teammates get to know Cam Ward based on everything that you and I have heard from his time at Miami and beyond, before that even, and what we've said and gone through on this podcast, people we've talked to like Kayla Anderson, Travis Wingfield. I think
spoke to Xavier Restrepo and Kyle Williams and Jacoby George and Sam Brown Jr.
Like, I think we have a pretty good idea of who Cam Ward is as a player, as a leader, as a teammate, and I think his teammates are going to get behind him. And I didn't plan on talking about this, but it just made me think of it. The whole thing with Brian Callahan making Cam Ward earn the job. I was listening to Albert Breer was on Rich Eisen the other day talking about how when Callahan was in Cincinnati, they sort of just gave the reins to Joe Burrow. Like, it was obvious he's the number one pick. They didn't really have an option on the roster, so it was obvious he was going to be the number one pick. Or he was obvious that he was going to be the starting quarterback. And then Callahan apparently told Albert Breer that he was like, I'm going to take the same approach with Will Levis. And so we remember last year, like Will Levis, it was like, it's all about Will Levis. It's his team. There was no question. There was no competition. And this year, with a player who is like more obviously going to be the starter in Cam Ward than Will Levis, who was a second-round pick, he did not take the same approach. He's taking a make him earn it approach. And I think when you hear what his teammates said about him after practice, which we're going to get into a little bit after we talk about this energy stuff, and when you see what Jeffrey Simmons, like, he's going to earn it. It's going to get to a point where his teammates know he deserves to be the starter before he is actually named the starter. Right. And I actually think that is the best approach with this situation. It's the same approach the Commanders took with Jaden Daniels last year. And I think it's going to pay dividends in the long run.
Well, look, it's very obvious that he's going to be the starter. That was the case from the day they drafted him. But when you're 3-14, in all honesty, like Brian Callahan was last year, you look to do shit differently, right? And he did kind of reflect on, maybe we should have made, I'm paraphrasing, but he said a couple conferences ago, maybe we should have made Will Levis earn it a bit more, or, we could have taken a different approach. And you look to change things when you're bad. And they've changed a lot this offseason from a philosophical approach, right? Just how they approach the football team in general. So, but you're right. You listen to guys talk after practice. I won't get too much into it, but you listen to what Jarvis Brownlee Jr. said today. You listen to what Darrell Baker Jr. said today, a couple of cornerbacks, guys on the defensive side of the ball, right? You're starting to see that process unfurl naturally, right? As opposed to just, we took him number one overall. We know he's our guy.
And Callahan even said in his presser today, talking about how, like, because they asked him, what did you learn? Like, you've instituted all these changes about what the team learned last year. What did you learn about yourself? And he said, I learned a lot, and I think it's important that I act on what I learned and really make an effort to change the things that weren't working and not just say, oh, that didn't work, and then, go about your business the same way. So this is one of those things that has been changed along with the entire offseason program. But back to the topic at hand here. I want to play Nick Holtz talking about what the trash talking between Cam Ward and Jeffrey Simmons is bringing to the offense. So here's Nick Holtz.
That I wish I kind of had that level of poise at some point when somebody was talking to me like Jeff. But it was fun. I think that's an energy to practice. We, when it's handled well and it's kind of doesn't ever go too far, but it brings everybody's kind of energy level up a little bit. And probably on offense, it's a little something we've needed. We need a little bit of edge to us.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Nick.
Well, I'll say this, right? Again, when you were bad on offense last year, the way the Titans were, you're an offensive coordinator like Nick Holtz, you are looking for change. You're looking for more energy. You're looking for more passion. And, that quote started with, I wish I had the poise, to kind of stay calm when someone's talking the way Jeff, because we know Jeff is an elite trash talker. So we know Jeff taking it a little far, but not too far. It's a good energy between them. They're butting heads at practice. They're not scrapping. They're not fighting. They're not getting personal. They're just jawing back and forth. And it's great to see that coaches like Nick Holtz and obviously Brian Callahan, I think, have really appreciated the sort of new element that dynamic has brought to the offense.
And I'm going to play a longer clip now. This is over a minute long, but it's Brian Callahan talking about Cam Ward, trash talking, and the process that it's been for him watching and trying to coach Cam Ward and trying to call plays during these trash talking sessions. Here is Brian Callahan. And I think that this quote really tells us a lot about what Cam Ward is going to be in the NFL, not what we saw on tape in college, but like who this guy is about to be as an NFL starting quarterback.
Yeah, I'm not, I'll be honest, I'm not used to calling plays to a quarterback who's usually still talking when I'm talking to him. And that's great. And so I asked him after practice, and I said, just help me out here. I said, do you need me to wait till you finish? And he goes, no, I'm listening. So he's hearing what I'm telling him, and it was a pretty remarkable to see all the things going on and how much he's talking, but like his brain is still like with me, I guess is the best way to put it. Like when I'm calling him play, he's doing all he's doing, but he's listening to everything I'm telling him. And he enters right into the huddle and he calls a play and doesn't script the play call. And I thought that was actually kind of remarkable. I don't know, I couldn't do that. So that's just kind of who he is. That's his personality. And again, if it was something that I felt like was detrimental to his ability to manage the offense and call it in a huddle and all that, I'd probably have a couple things to say to him, but he didn't miss a beat when it came to calling the play and being on top of it and then executing when it came time to execute. So it was a new experience for me, but it was fun.
I'm sure it is fun. And it's interesting that he's never been around a quarterback like this. We know that he's been around a lot of great quarterbacks, Matthew Stafford, Joe Burrow, among many others. But he talked about Peyton Manning. Sorry, I forgot.
I was going to say, has anyone ever been around Peyton Manning and Peyton Manning doesn't get name dropped? And he's been around a lot of good quarterbacks.
Sorry. But yes, it's interesting because Cam Ward was compared to one of those guys by his own teammate after practice today, if you want to take that one.
Yeah, Daryl Baker Jr. Stepped aside with the wonderful Kayla Anderson, friend of the pod, who pulled him aside for a one-on-one interview. And Daryl Baker, if I'm remembering the clip correctly, unprompted, like I don't think Kayla even asked him, like, who would you compare him to? Kind of unprompted, in the middle of a long answer that he's giving about Cam Ward, he just randomly says, well, he reminds me of Joe Burrow. And I saw, Kayla's eyes lit up. And now when you've got a good quote when someone says that, again, sort of unsolicited, if you will. And Jarvis Brownlee Jr. had a terrific quote about Cam Ward, ended it with Teron Davenport, I believe, what was the source of that one. And then going back to what Brian Callahan just said, that clip that you played, I talked about Daryl Baker, but I want to go back to that clip. It's going to be fun. You hear laughter in the room. What really sticks out to me, and I know you'll feel the same way, and that's really impressive about it, beyond the humorous aspect to it, is the ability to process information, right? The multitasking where you could be trash talking, doing whatever. At the same time, you're getting a play call in the huddle. You go back into the huddle and you execute it without missing a beat. Those are Brian Callahan's exact words. Like for any rookie quarterback, one of the first things coaches look for, and it always gets overlooked by fans, not talked about enough, but it's so important to coaches, is the ability to command the huddle, get in and out of there in a timely, efficient fashion. So the fact that he's able to do that in the middle of trash talking, yada, yada, it says a lot about his ability to process and multitask. And those are things that will help you a lot when you're playing in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think that is such a good point because it really does tell us a lot about him, not just that. I mean, obviously, like, yes, he has to be able to process multiple trains of thought at the same time, essentially. I think the trash talking part of it comes naturally to where the words are just coming out of his mouth and he's not even thinking because he has always been a trash talker. But the other side of that is that the play calls are coming in and out of his brain without much thinking. And I think that this is a testament to the 5 a.m. meetings he's been doing with his fellow rookies where they're going over the script for the day every day. I think it's a testament to something that I seem, again, to be the only person in the world that cares about, but the VR training where you are repeating those play calls into the headset and you're hearing them from your coaches and then you're visualizing the play in a virtual space that feels real. It's not on a TV screen. That all of these things help him ingest this stuff so that it is second nature when he hears the play call. He's not thinking about, okay, what does that mean for the routes and for the protection? He's thinking like, okay, I'm seeing this play call unfold as I'm saying it, so I know exactly where I need to go with the ball. And the fact that he's already there in June is huge, I think, for like his ability to hit the ground running. Because if we get to training camp and Cam Ward is still trying to like get through the wordiness of these incredibly long, complicated play calls, and he's not focusing on the details of the play yet because he's still trying to learn the plays, that's going to make week 1 more difficult. But if in June already, where he's going to have another month and a half to study and get ready before training camp actually begins, by the time we get to training camp, all of these play calls are going to be second nature to him. It's going to allow him week 1 to hit the ground more like a vet than like a rookie. Now, obviously, there's still a lot of stuff he's not going to have experienced yet, so he is without a doubt still a rookie, but just he's going to be an advanced rookie. I think he's going to be ahead of the curve, and all the work that he's doing off the practice field is setting him up to be that. So it speaks a lot about his processing ability, where he's at already, his work ethic. It's just, I mean, there's no bad things that we have to say about Cam Ward yet. Easton Freeze wrote an article yesterday where he's talking about how I'm trying not to get too hyped up. And he was like, I think the best way to say it is I haven't seen anything yet that makes me think Cam Ward won't be a good NFL quarterback, if not great. And there was another, to your point about him going into the huddle and calling these plays while he's trash talking, JC Latham said after practice, this from JT Runke, that the leadership Cam Ward has in the huddle is what really stands out. And that's where we got the information that Cam was headbutting Simmons as things got heated. So this guy's the real deal. And I've been saying it for, 6 months now, but I'm glad everyone else is seeing it too.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't have a lot to add. In all honesty, I'll just say that he's certainly ahead of the 8 ball right now. And that was really, really encouraging stuff, not only from his teammates, off the practice field, but also what we heard from Brian Callahan and Nick Holtz. And as you said, Coach Callie's been around some great quarterbacks. So for him to he used the word remarkable, for him to be sort of
twice.
Blown away. Yeah, twice. For him to sort of be blown away by Cam Ward's command of the huddle and ability to process and relay the play call while engaging with defensive teammates at the same time, it does sound like a special trait of his.
And speaking of engaging with defensive teammates, we mentioned the Jarvis Brownlee Jr. quote. Here it is, courtesy of Teron Davenport. He's unbelievable. The types of throws he makes and plays, it's incredible. He's everything you could want in a quarterback. I'm excited to have him. And like you said, it's one thing for Calvin Ridley the other day to be talking, raving about his quarterback. Like, what's he supposed to say? Right. And I guess that applies to the defense too. What are they supposed to say? It's the number 1 pick. Of course, they're going to hype him up, but they don't have to be as glowing as much as they are. Right. Like, this is
go with the detail.
Right. And he's like, Brownlee's not the first person to say this is the type of guy you want at quarterback. So again, he's just winning over every single one of his teammates. And we have to talk about one more Cam Ward related thing before we talk about the rest of this team, because there's not one player on the team. There's 90 right now, 91 even. But, the other thing we haven't talked about yet is the play of the day, the Cam Ward play of the day. And this also came from Teron Davenport, but that Cam Ward recognized a blitz pre-snap, checked out of the play call that everyone was in, and moved to a different play, drops back, beats the blitz with his throw, 50-yard bomb to Calvin Ridley,
Touchdown.
Who celebrates in the end zone as Cam Ward's talking trash as the ball's in the air. Like, that's what we're waiting for. And we've seen some, I don't know how much you follow the rest of the NFL. I'm not talking to you, Justin. I'm talking to the listeners. The rest of the NFL in this time of year, we've seen so many Shedeur Sanders, deep balls that, the aggregators are gushing over. And we've seen a lot of nice Cam Ward throws and some intermediate stuff and some rockets, but we haven't seen, a straight up go deep ball yet. We haven't even seen reports of one, let alone video footage of one. But this one we got today, finally, Cam Ward. And I think it's not just the throw. It's not just that he had an accurate down the field throw to Calvin Ridley. It's the recognition pre-snap, checking to the correct call, and then beating the blitz with his throw to pick up 50 yards on a touchdown. On a day where the offense was overall struggling in a situation that we can only assume was a third down, because it was a third down day and this wasn't part of the 2-minute period. Again, what more can you say? He's been awesome.
That's the play we all hope hits our social media wave later, our timeline. I don't know if it will, but he checks out of a play, as you said, recognizes the blitz, 50 yards to Calvin Ridley. If you want to throw a wet blanket on it, apparently it was UDFA corner Jalen Kimber that was in coverage on the play, covering Calvin Ridley. But it was about a 50-yard bomb, according to Buck Reising. I think Buck and TD sort of combined to give some really good info on that play. But that was certainly the offense's best play of the day.
Yeah, and JT said something about it too. I think he said it was the play of the day. Looking for the play of the day was Cam Ward to Ridley on a deep bomb. Perfect ball. Offense was fired up. Cam continuing to chirp defense. All right, Justin, we have some other...
They said even hit the Cam Ward celebration there after. So, again, his teammates are excited about him.
Right. All right, we do have some other stuff that we want to cover here. I want to talk about a rookie that we haven't mentioned this week yet, Femi Oladejo, who obviously Titans' second-round pick. And I think, outside of Cam Ward, Femi Oladejo might be one of the most important players on the Titans roster this season if they want to be a competitive, borderline playoff level team. Like, if they're just going to be a 5-6 win team, then he's not that important. But if they are actually going to compete for something, it's going to be because Femi Oladejo makes an impact as a rookie, because the Titans do not have an impact pass rusher on the edge right now. Obviously, Jeffrey Simmons is an impact pass rusher when he's, fully healthy, and the 20 pounds he lost in the offseason, he appears to be moving very well on the field and obviously talking trash with Cam Ward and all that. But from the edge position, Draymond Jones, Arden Key, these guys are good players. They're fine players, but they're not going to, every once in a while, but they're not going to really change games. And I'm not saying Femi Oladejo is either. But if Femi Oladejo can step up and give them, I don't want to get crazy here, but 8 sacks as a rookie, to me, that completely changes that changes the floor of the defense. I don't know if it really affects the ceiling, because again, I don't know if he's a superstar level pass rusher. Maybe he is. Probably not as a rookie. But it at least raises the floor of what this defense can be. And the coaches at the podium before practice today were raving about Femi Oladejo's intelligence and his ability to the transition to outside linebacker from inside linebacker has been as smooth as they could have hoped. And Callahan, Femi Oladejo left practice early on Tuesday, and it was kind of unclear if he was injured or what happened. And Callahan said, yeah, I think he's dealing with something. I'm not sure if he should be out there today, but he might be limited, is what Callahan said this morning. And then he's out there in practice making plays all over the field.
Yeah, we got a couple reports of quite a few plays. Would-be sack after he beat UDFA tackle Brendan Crenshaw-Dixon around the edge. He's playing outside linebacker, so occasionally, pass rusher. That means you're going to have to drop into coverage a little bit. He's got some instincts there from previously playing off-ball backer. Well, he drops into coverage and makes a play on Van Jefferson in the flat. There were a couple other QB pressures that he recorded in addition to the would-be sack that I had just mentioned. So by all accounts and purposes, a really good day for Femi Oladejo. And like you said, he changes the math for them up front. We've kind of debated how involved he's going to be in year one. He's a little raw, again, making the midseason position switch to edge. They've got Arden Key. They got Draymond Jones there. By the way, on Draymond Jones, he gave a great interview after practice with Titans media as well. Dropped a couple would-be F-bombs, said we're here to F people up. Talked about how he's standing up a lot. So that's a hint. If anyone thought the Titans were going to play him inside a little bit, it sounds like he's primarily going to be playing edge, which is what I thought they signed him for based on their lack of depth at that spot. And he noted how he's a bigger guy, between 260, 270, stop the run on early downs, rush the passer. Denard Wilson gushed about him during his presser. He's something along the lines of, I've been smiling ear to ear since Draymond Jones got here. We're so happy to have him. But you're right. Femi Oladejo changes the math for them up front, because right now it's Draymond Jones, it's Arden Key, it's Lorenzo Carter, a bit of a journeyman who's had a couple of years with 4 or 5 sacks. He also is a bigger-bodied guy, by the way, so a clear point of emphasis for Mike Borgonzi to get bigger, these 265, 270-pound edges in Draymond Jones and Lorenzo Carter. But Femi Oladejo, if he could hit the ground running and play some notable snaps for them, take some of the pressure off Arden Key and Draymond Jones. The problem with Key and Jones is they're I call them 2.5/3s. I hate to call them 3s because I think they're a bit better, but they're not true 2s either. And if the Titans need them to be 1s and 2s, then that's a problem. But if Femi Oladejo can alleviate some of the pressure off their shoulders and really contribute, maybe even at the same level that they're contributing at, and ensure that they're playing less snaps, around the snap count that they probably should be playing, then yeah, it's a difference maker for this defense.
Yeah, and I'm going to play a quote here. Callahan talking about Femi Oladejo, and then we'll continue this conversation. Here's Callahan.
One of the things about Femi that's great is he's got really high-level football intelligence, and so things make sense to him. As a former off-the-ball Mike linebacker, he's got a very good vision for what everybody's doing, and so that transition's been easy for him because of his intelligence.
Now, Callahan went on to say that he still has some technique stuff to work on and clean up, and that process is ongoing. Of course, it makes sense. But Teron Davenport also noted in his OTA notes from today, here's what he said exactly. That dude, Femi, gets off the ball really well. So that's something that, it is a technique, obviously, but it's different from like your pass rush, like your hand placement and the pass rush arsenal technique is getting off the ball, just timing it up with the snap count and being explosive out of your stance. The fact that he's doing that really well, it makes every other part of rushing the passer a lot easier if you can explode off the ball. So that's a good note from Teron.
Well, yeah, he's quick, he's fast, explosive, and he's strong. So, not surprised to hear that he made a big impact on day 2 of mandatory minicamp.
All right, let's move on here and talk about JC Latham because we've mentioned him last week. There's been a lot of talk about the work he's done on his body to coming into this offseason, and obviously he's moving back to right tackle where he played in college after spending all of last year on the left side. Real quick, before we talk about him, here's Nick Holtz on JC Latham.
Oh, he's looked, I would say he's been our best lineman so far throughout the offseason program. He's been the most consistent. He's got, kind of almost no negatives on every day. He's graded out at like an unbelievable level on just what we've done. His conditioning has been excellent. He looks like he's half the size that he was, not to totally, but we challenged him after the season. Hey, you got to lose weight. You got to get in shape, and talk about a guy that took those conversations and really changed his whole lifestyle of how he was eating and, taking care of his body, and he looks like a whole different player out there. So he's been pretty awesome.
He's been pretty awesome, he said. He's been their best O-line, most consistent, hardly any negatively graded plays when they're reviewing practice film together. It's like, yep, you're doing everything exactly right. And if you listen to JC Latham on Bussin' with the Boys a couple weeks ago, he talked about how when he was in practice at Alabama, he would go up against Will Anderson, and there was a period where Will Anderson wasn't practicing because he was like working back from something, and JC Latham was the most dominant player at practice. And he probably feels a little bit right now like he's back there. And I bet his confidence is sky high, and he's playing with that confidence. And I just feel like, number one, he should be their best offensive lineman. He's the highest drafted guy on the line. And they need him to be what they draft. They need him to meet his draft pedigree, because if the Titans can go from having quite literally the worst right tackle play in the NFL over the past, 5 seasons now, at least 3 to 4, to having a guy who's not only an average starter, but a quality starter. And PFF actually released an article today naming their all breakout team, or maybe this was yesterday, but their all breakout team. And they had JC Latham this was like 25 players who are going to break out this year. It wasn't one from each team or one at each position. It was just 25 players, and JC Latham made their all breakout team. If that happens, again, this one I think is not just a floor raiser, but it's a ceiling raiser for what the Titans offense can be.
I agree. I mean, you love to hear what Nick Holtz had to say about JC Latham. I personally expect a big step forward from him this year. His body looks great. You heard the way they've described it. You heard him on Bussin' with the Boys. He's playing a more natural right tackle position. He's got a veteran guard next to him in Kevin Zeitler that I think is going to be a huge, huge benefit to him. Both, double teams, football IQ experience, all of that good stuff. Teron Davenport noted today that Kevin Zeitler looks like he could bench press a building, by the way. So I thought that was really something. I expect a huge step forward from JC Latham this year. And if he's as good as he can be, then this Titans O-line has a chance to be like a top 15 unit in the NFL.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm kind of this is a dangerous place to be from a fan perspective, is that I'm kind of expecting it. So I've now set myself up to be disappointed. But
Dennis Daly, Andre Dillard, we've been through a lot. NPF, it would be nice if they could get this O-line back to the Taylor Lewan, Ben Jones, Roger Saffold days. There
was a long stretch of time where the Titans were known for being one of the best O-line teams. I mean, Mike Munchak was the O-line coach for a long time.
Country, Michael Roos, just so many great players over the last 20 years.
It goes back to the Oilers even. I mean, in terms of this team having great offensive linemen. So can we get that again? As fans, can we watch? Can we not be subjected to an offense that is just constantly giving up unblocked pressure or pressure within 2 seconds of the snap? It would be really great. So my expectations for JC Latham are sky high. I think he could be one of the best players on the Titans roster by this time next year, you know? All right, I have one last topic I want to hit. I don't know if you had anything else, but I'm going to talk about Xavier Restrepo because John Fossil was asked about him in his press conference and just talked a lot about how guys who have a lot of versatility are more valuable. Obviously, we know that, but not just versatility in terms of like multiple positions on offense or defense, but versatility on special teams to be able to play on every special teams unit, whether in a different position, punt, kick, field goal, punt return, kick return. Like these are all different phases that have a lot of different skills required. Some of them you're blocking, some of them you're going down to tackle. And he talked about being able to be versatile. And there's been a lot of talk about Xavier Restrepo's path to the final 53. I know Easton Freeze has written multiple articles about Restrepo, and a lot of people have talked about it. And some people have called him a lock to make the roster, and some people have said he's battling for his life. We talked about this. I said almost the same phrase yesterday. Sorry if you've tuned into both. But I think that there's kind of this misconception out there that Xavier Restrepo can't really play special teams, or he won't really be a good special teams player unless he wins the return job. And I disagree with this idea. And I think it comes from the fact that like he's not the fastest guy and he doesn't have the most athleticism. So he doesn't bring a lot of value as a gunner because he's not going to sprint down the field with 4.3 speed to tackle the punt returner or whatever. But I think that, again, that's a misconception because I would rather have a guy who I know is going to give 110% effort, gritty, tough, do what he's supposed to do, know his job and do his job, than have who may not be the most athletic. Then have a guy who has 4.3 speed, but the reason he's even playing special teams at all is because he hasn't really like figured out how to play wide receiver or hasn't really figured out how to play cornerback. So we're just sticking him on special teams because he's athletic. Those are the types of guys that don't have good like discipline in their lanes, that get pushed out of bounds. Like those guys may be faster, but that doesn't make them better special teams players. No. And in the long run, like a punt that travels 40 yards, the difference between a guy who runs a 4.3 and a 4, even if you want to go with the pro day time of 4.8, like it's not like he's getting down the field. He's not like he's 20 yards behind the guy who runs a 4.3. It's not that big of a deal. So I think Xavier Restrepo could play special teams and make the roster because of it.
Well, I'll put it like this. I think most people can play special teams if they're smart and they commit themselves, right? I think that's the point here. And I honestly think that's what Bones was trying to say. Like, if you listened, he said, those smaller, less athletic guys tend to be grittier, and they need it. They need to be because they want it more, right? Or they want it more because they need to want it more because there's no other pathway for you, right? Like, there's got to be a want to factor, a give a shit factor on special teams. And if that's what Xavier Restrepo needs to do to make the team, then that's what he's got to do, right? And if he doesn't do it successfully, then he might not make the team. It's clear as day, and that's the case for most guys who are battling for their lives. You got to be able to play special teams, and in order to play it well, you've got to commit yourself. You got to have a high football IQ, and you've got to give a shit, right? So, I think Xavier Restrepo's capable. He had said, I think it was yesterday, he had said, I've played special teams my whole life. Kind of thing. So, he did it at Miami. It's something he's probably going to have to continue doing at the next level, at least early on in his career, if he's going to stick. I thought that was a really interesting presser by Bones. And I think that's exactly what he was trying to convey is, hey, those guys that have the more difficult paths to the roster, they tend to be better special teams players because they know they need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you have anything else from minicamp practice day 2?
No, I think that does it. This was a really solid episode. We promised you guys we'd be back on day 2, and we're promising you we're going to be back on day 3. We've got another episode tomorrow for the final mandatory minicamp practice. Titans will then go on a break until training camp. It's going to be a rough, month and a half. We're going to keep hitting you with episodes consistently, 2, 3 a week, whatever it is. We'll keep hitting you with episodes. We got lots of topics to talk about. Training camp previews, whether the Titans do anything in the offseason in terms of contracts, extensions, free agents, yada, yada. We'll start hitting position battles because those are really going to ramp up at training camp. Brian Callahan, Denard Wilson, Nick Holtz, they've consistently said that. Once the pads come on, that's really when the training camp battles begin. I think Graver and I have a really good feel for what those battles are going to be and what they're going to look like. So we'll do a lot of preview stuff. But before that, we do have one more mandatory minicamp episode. We'll be back tomorrow with our conclusion of day 3.
Absolutely, we will. So thanks to everyone for tuning in. Again, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We are pushing for 4,000 subscribers, and we are so close. You guys can help us get us over the hump by taking 1 second to move your mouse and click a button. That's all we're asking. And if you really feel like you like the content, hit that little bell notification thing too, and you get an alert every time we drop a new video. And leave a comment. Comments help the show grow. It's the best way that you can support us is to just leave a comment below. The other best way is to send this podcast to all your friends and tell them that you enjoy it and see if they do too. So thanks to everyone for tuning in. Thanks to Sinkers Beverages, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville. Go to sinkersbeverages.com or look for them on Uber Eats. And also, Justin, a reminder to our listeners, titansofthesouth.com. Get your book, $20, free shipping, first 1,000 purchasers only. Comes with a free gift, the exclusive illustrated player trading card. It's got the 2024 chapter and the 2025 offseason, so you don't want to miss that. titansofthesouth.com, only available for the first 1,000 copies in the United States. That's it. I hit everything. Yes?
Y'all stay safe out there and tighten up.
A Broadway sports media production.